Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and today we are going to kick off the series for Module 4, which is our financial arrangements module. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who came to our seminar. We had a great time. I had a great day with you. And for those of you who were joining us remotely, I hope that it was great for you as well. And this will kick off, for those of you who are new with DC Trainings, this will kick off a series of 8 weekly webinars where we'll dive into more depth in the individual sections of Module 4. So I invite your questions. My hope is that when we carry out through this module, you'll have an in-depth understanding and ability to really address basically any financial arrangements. My chair is rolling away from me right now, but any financial arrangements for patients in different circumstances, given that many of us have different styles of practice, right? I was actually just meeting this weekend with a doctor who practices in Sacramento, and he has an all-cash practice and doesn't have any insurance. And he actually kind of true to the point. He's one of our new members. He wasn't on the seminar at the seminar this weekend, but true to what I was teaching you this weekend, I want to make sure that you are profitable. And when we crunch the numbers with his overhead, he wasn't even breaking even. In fact, he was in the red, or he was at a loss. So we crunched some numbers together and restructured the way he sets up his fees in his office, and it's going to make a huge difference. I mean, it's essentially going to double his income from last year. So it was really inspiring for me to be able to help a fellow DC, but also I know he's excited moving forward. So anyways, yeah, it was great to see you this weekend. We're going to follow through this module now week by week. And anytime, if you have any questions, please let me know. You can email me, you can join the webinars, you can let us know how I can help you, especially if you have what I call these practice subluxations that are causing interference in terms of your ability to have optimum financial arrangements or optimum profits from your practice. We can't keep food on the table at home if our practice isn't paying the bills. So anyway, I was really excited to see those of you who came to the seminar this weekend. Thank you so much for joining me in Santa Cruz. And let's kick off Module 4, Financial Arrangements, and start to break this down so you can use it in your practice. This first slide that I want to show you is just an overview of the module. And again, for those of you who are new with DC Trainings, you can actually access these on the website from the section on seminars, which I can show you that. But let's see, there we go. Which I can show you that. But those are sorry, I tripped myself up. But those sections are available as a recorded seminar on the website. They won't be available today. That's what stopped me there for a second. They'll be available later this week, or probably next week. But we'll have those sections available for you so that you can go back and review the seminar content if you need to and do a recap. But looking at your screen right now, and actually I have to jump back over one more time. Sorry. There we go. Okay. This is the overview. This is starting with today's topic, which is requirements for acceptance, and going all the way through the module. We're going to talk about each one of these topics. And I encourage you to join us on the weekly webinars, because it helps really cement in the information. The other part that's really advantageous is you can have your team join these webinars. So from the comfort of your office, every Thursday from 11 to 12, your team can log in with you and take notes on what they're learning from the section or what they're reviewing from the section. I can't emphasize enough how powerful that is, to have your team's input in terms of what maybe doctors you feel is the most important priority versus what your team feels is the most important priority. When you put those two together, it's not the power of 2, it's the power of 11 like this, 11, when you put those two together. So I really want to emphasize that. Thursdays for the webinar, have your team log in with you. I know some docs like to log in themselves. Maybe they're not in the office on Thursday morning, but they'll log in themselves, and then they'll also have their team log in from the office and join in that way. I know one of our other docs, he every Thursday he just gets together with his whole team, and they all log in and they review the content together and spend that hour. Then he spends another 30 minutes afterwards just doing a recap. What was the most important thing you gathered? Here's what I gathered. Let's put that together and let's plan for action steps to implement those into our practice. So that's another advantageous way of using these webinars to really, there we go, to help your practice to thrive. So let's jump into our topic today, which is the requirements for acceptance. This is the first section in this module. And I want to just point out too, because when we have a report of findings, your patients will commit to a care plan. And that's based on whatever their circumstances are at the beginning. And it might be that their circumstances are that they're in a lot of pain, right? That's maybe what brought them to a chiropractor. I think it's unfortunate how our current healthcare system really focuses so much on only symptom relief and being pain-free without regard to maintaining optimum health. But given that that's the environment we live in, a lot of times the patients that we see will wait until it's in the later stages or in a more acute situation before they come and see us. And so that's the driving force behind their decision to come to you as a new patient. At this point in the requirements for acceptance, we want to let them know we have a bigger picture in mind. We have a picture in mind that will help them to operate at a threshold that's much higher than just pain relief or the absence of pain. It's much, much more developed. It's much more rewarding. And given that context, we want to let them know this is the threshold that we operate in. Maybe this is what brought you in, but for us to really dive in and take care of you properly, this is the threshold we want to aim for. Now, if that were to happen, and I want to ask this as a question, if that were to happen, what would happen to the size of your practice if your patients followed through with the recommendations? In other words, if they came to all their appointments, if they rescheduled and let you know that they were going to miss an appointment before the appointment, so that appointment could be rescheduled and they wouldn't miss out on it. Like that's the goal that we want to have in our practices. So that's why we set that, well, I'll use my hands the same way. That's why we set the threshold up here, even though maybe they're coming into our practice from a point of entry down here. Okay, so we want to make sure that that's followed. And this is a bit of a paradigm shift, right? Because it is, as it says on the screen, for you to accept the patient, they have to agree to follow your recommendations. So in other words, your patients are applying to become a member of your practice. It's not the other way around. You're not applying to be able to take care of them. They got in their car, they drove to you. They want the care that you have. But in order to accept them as a patient, I want you to be comfortable with establishing that threshold for your patients. So that's why it says on the screen. I'll just repeat that because I think it's a mindset as much as it is coming through in your language or the conversation that you're having. It's a mindset where you're accepting them as a patient in order, and to do that, they're agreeing to follow your recommendations. Okay, so just get that frame of mind. And if you need something to just back that up a little bit, just for a moment, imagine that when you take care of every patient in the best way possible, and of course, that's what we do, right? We want to give our patients our all. We want to give them the best care that we can possibly give them so that they get the best results possible. When we do that, what happens to the level of their health? And that's the miracle of chiropractic. You can see the picture of BJ Palmer on the wall behind me. The miracle of chiropractic is that by removing the subluxations and the interference to the nervous system, your patient is allowed to operate at their fullest health potential. The innate intelligence within them can heal the body with that interference being removed, right? So imagine that every patient you took care of literally had the best results possible, and then continue that image in the sense that when they get the best results possible, how are they going to feel about your practice, about chiropractic care? How much more willing are they going to be to spread the word and tell others and refer their friends and family, and ultimately to follow through with the recommendations that you've given them? Of course, it's going to be much higher. But if patients are missing appointments, they're not following through for whatever reason, obviously they have their priorities and I respect that, but for whatever reason they're not following through, then obviously we're going to get to that in this next slide, but obviously their results would suffer. So let's move forward here and I'll show you how this works. Patients want a clear path to get healthy. They want that. That's why they got in their car and they drove to see you. Okay, so that part's clear. They want to get better. They want to improve their health, and they came into the office to get that. We're going to provide that, but it's going to be on your terms. Now, obviously, the terms of the patient, which has gotten them to where they are when they come into the office, those terms, in most cases, maybe not all, but in most cases, haven't worked out so well for them. That's why they're coming to see you, right? So we're going to provide one, but it's going to be on our terms. And ultimately, if we fall short of that, if we don't provide, if they don't get results, if they miss appointments, if those appointments aren't made up, if they don't do their stretches at home, or they don't follow through with what it is you're recommending them to do, they're not going to get the best results. That's why it says if they fail to get results, now who gets blamed, right? They're not going to say, well, I missed half my appointments. No, it's going to be you. You're going to get blamed because the adjustment wasn't quite right. The adjustment was, they didn't do both sides of my lower back instead of one, like my last chiropractor, or whatever the situation is, we get blamed. And not that that's a bad thing, because I don't blame the patient for that at all. It's just that we have busy lives and they have other priorities that are coming up in their life that in their mind, those priorities are a higher priority. And so our care suffers. So knowing this, and then I want to, sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but I want to just fast forward for a moment to module 6. When we get to module 6 in November, and the topic of that module is goals and marketing, one of the sections I'll teach you is reactivation marketing, so that you're basically continuously staying in touch with your former patients so that they feel comfortable coming back to you when the time arises. And of course, we can plant little ticklers to invite them, and I'll show you how to do that. In fact, it's a very great system because we have reactivating new patients coming in all the time as a result of that system. But imagine that you're reaching out to those patients and asking them to come back in. And in their mind, they're saying, well, the last time I went to the chiropractor, it didn't work out so well for me. In fact, I still have that back pain, or I never really got all the way better. Then because in their mind, we were at fault for that, what are the chances that they're going to want to come back in when you invite them in? It's going to go down, right? So we want to make sure that we keep that communication open, but at the same time, set that threshold. Now, let me just take that little sidebar and then move it into our topic here, because one of the topics during this module is going to be the reactivating new patient report of findings. How do we do a report of findings when somebody comes back in to see us? And how does that differ from the very first report of findings that we did when they came in the first time? And there is a difference. There's a distinct difference. And one of the differences is we don't want to repeat the same mistakes we made before that ultimately left them in a position where they left the practice. Now, I understand it may have been that they left the practice because they moved or their job changed or some other scenario, but ultimately the results may have suffered. And if that's why they left the practice, then we have a different scenario in mind. And when they come back in, we're going to change our approach so we accommodate that reason for them leaving before. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit later in this module. But again, just going back to our slide here, because I feel like this is really important, we don't want to end up where the patients have in their mind that it was our fault that they didn't get the results that they need. Because if that's the case, the chances of them coming back in when we're trying to reactivate them through our marketing goes down significantly. Okay, so let's keep going, because the way to prevent this from happening, prevent us from getting blamed or whatever the reason is, we want to ask for agreement to follow through before reviewing the cost of care. Now, what that ultimately means, well, as it says on the screen, this is going to prevent challenges from coming up later. But what this ultimately means in the big picture of the flow through the report of findings is it means that we're going to try to clear out any challenges that could interrupt the care plan besides financial arrangements. Okay, so we're just saying, besides because hands down, every single report of findings, there's a big question around cost, especially these days when the cost of healthcare is, well, I'll call it sick care just to emphasize my statement right now. The cost of sick care is astronomical for anyone who has to pay for it in the United States. Now, other countries that are different, one of my CAs just went down. Her family is from Mexico, great CA, and her family's from Mexico. And so she had to have some procedure done. She went down to Mexico, and it was like less than a tenth of the cost that the same procedure was going to cost the United States. And so I asked her, what's the difference? How is it that Mexico's prices for that same procedure can be 1/10 the cost of the United States? And she said, it's very simple. In Mexico, the pharmaceutical companies can't advertise, and neither can the medical doctors. Actually, this was a dental procedure, but still, the pharmaceutical companies can't advertise in Mexico. Now, the cost of advertising a drug is astronomically high to make sure people take that drug, right? So in the United States, those costs are very high. So anyways, back to my point. With the cost that people are paying for healthcare or sick care in the United States to get moderately okay results, we want to make sure that any other challenges that are going to interrupt this care plan are moved aside, are taken care of, are handled before we get into cost, because it's such a big topic, and every single report of findings has that topic as an issue to overcome or handle before we embark on their chiropractic care. Every single report of findings. So knowing that, as much as I can streamline it for you, is going to help you to have a more successful report of findings for all your patients. So, as I said, ask for agreement to follow through before reviewing the cost of care so we can prevent challenges later. Now, what are those issues? We're going to talk about that in the next section, actually, on care plan objections. But so I don't want to get into those specifically today, but let's go ahead and just make a strong point to emphasize what this means for you. And what this means for you is, well, what are the two most common objections that people have to starting care? What are they? The first one, which you probably said out loud, is cost. First one. Okay, hands down. I agree. Can't argue with that. The first challenge in terms of a course of care is always cost. Now, you might be saying to yourself right now, wait a minute, doc, hold on. I have a lot of PI patients. I know one of our docs on the call right now has a lot of PI. Has a big PI practice. So you might be saying, well, wait a minute, I have a lot of PI cases, and those are handled through an attorney or through MedPay. And so we don't have an issue with cost. But I would ask in return, how many of those PI cases continue chiropractic care with you after the case is resolved? Number one. And how many of those PI cases do you change or center the care around what the coverage is, as opposed to potentially what the patient really needs? And I think the answer to those two questions, unfortunately, is most of the time for both. Well, I said it backwards for the first one. How many of them continue care? I'll say how many of them stop care after the PI case? And then how many of those care plans do you change your visits based on the coverage? And I can't say that I'm not guilty of this sometimes. Obviously, there's some influence in terms of a patient's, my recommendations for a patient when the cost of care changes. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a patient that comes in that's a PI case and they have $5,000 med pay, well, yes, you can take care of them, and you know that PI case is covered. You might even, add some extra services in there that would benefit your patient. It's not unethical. It's totally reasonable. And we know that we're going to be paid for those because of that med pay coverage. So that does happen. But ultimately, what are we out for? Well, in DC trainings, we have a clear statement about this, and it says lifetime care 1 year at a time. Lifetime care 1 year at a time. And if that's our ultimate goal for every patient, is to receive optimum chiropractic care. In fact, I just had a great adjustment yesterday, and it just made me realize how blessed we are in chiropractic, especially for those of us that work in chiropractic, that have access to ongoing chiropractic care anytime we need it. And I had such a great adjustment yesterday, and I realized how great that was. And what had happened was I was sitting in the car for 3.5 hours to drive to Sacramento, and I thought, oh, I'm kind of stiff. I've been sitting for too long. This is not comfortable. Hey, I think I'll get adjusted. And I just had this awesome adjustment, and set my spine straight. It was really great. But it made me really appreciate what it is that we have when we can just, on a moment's notice, take advantage of this amazing chiropractic care. Well, for patients, we have to come into this with the sort of the all-knowing presence of saying, you know what, I know what's possible for you. I know where you can take this if you use it the way that I do and the way that I see that my patients do. And the patients that get the best results are the ones that follow through with my recommendations. They utilize chiropractic care in a way that's not just pain relief, but it's lifetime care 1 year at a time. And that's the focus that we want to take with our patients. But at the same time, we want to let them know that's the standard that we operate on. I want to get you to the best results possible in the shortest amount of time. And in order for me to do that, this is what this is going to require, or this is what's going to be asked of you as you embark on this care plan. Okay. So I don't want to emphasize that point too much, but that's why it says, on the screen, there's a big stop sign. Stop, get a clear 100, handle all the objections, all of them, before we get into cost. Now, I know that most of your patients are going to say, my chair's got an extra rolly wheel on it today. I know most of your patients are going to say, when you ask them for a clear 100, they're going to say cost. It comes right off the top, right? Well, as long as we know that that's part of the equation, because it is in every care plan, like I said, whether it's talked about or not, that is an issue in every care plan, even with the $5,000 MedPay PI case. Why? Because we want lifetime care 1 year at a time. And the 1 year at a time is not going to be all PI case. It's going to include some maintenance care. So since we know that that's part of the equation, let's ask the question, and then let's weed out every other issue or every other objection, as it says on your screen, prior to getting into cost. Okay, so just to sort of bring this in for a landing, let me just share with you what that looks like. Let's see, Celeste, welcome to our call today. So, and by the way, Celeste is a fantastic CA. She's been a CA for a long time. So I'm sure she's already using this in her practice with her patients when she's delivering reports of findings. But Celeste, I just wanted to say, based on what you now understand about your condition, and you understand what it's going to take in order to get the best results. So with that in mind, where do you see yourself as being committed to following through with these appointments? Do you see yourself at 100%, 50%, 0%? Where do you see yourself as really following through with all these appointments? And then she's going to answer that question. I'm at 80%. Really? Thanks for sharing that with me. Do you mind if I ask why you said 80%? Now, how you ask that question is important. You don't want to be abrasive. You don't want to have this hard sell look in your eyes. You don't want to even be condescending. Like, why did you say that? I thought you were clearly 100%. I would be. Nothing like that. We want to be welcoming. We want to encourage. We want to be nurturing. And we certainly want to be empathetic with whatever's going to come out of this person's mouth after we ask the question. But the point is, I'm asking the question, and I'm going to go through the script here in just a minute to wrap up, but I just wanted to emphasize that, because the point of asking that question is to really get into any issues that are going to interrupt that care plan, ultimately affecting the patient's results. Okay. So, actually, let me just wrap up the PowerPoint, because I want to show you that on the website here. So next week, we'll get into the actual objections. So I'll give you actual examples of what kind of objections would come up aside from cost. So that being said, let me jump over here, and I have to pull up the website. Oh, and actually, apologize. I didn't actually pull it up yet. So let's do that. Let me go into the website. Bear with me for just a moment. Oh, come on. Oh, it's going slow. Huh. Let's do it this way. There we go. I think that should do it. My internet has a subluxation in it. Okay, let me pull this up, and I'm going to just walk through the website with you. Just again, for those of you who are new, I want you to be able to see the flow of where we go through the website or how we navigate this. So this is the login button here. Once we log in, it takes us to the dashboard. Now, real quickly, I just want to show you, because if you're wanting to come back and listen to either a recorded webinar or a recorded seminar, the webinars are here. So this will be a recorded webinar button that appears here. These are the login buttons for each one of the webinars coming up when you want to join. So this is the whole module. It's right here. And for the seminars, then you'll actually see this is going to go away because this is a link to virtually join the seminar we just had on Saturday. But you'll actually go to module 4 for this year, and it will actually populate with the videos here for each one of the sections. Right now, if you do it, it's going to take you to last year's seminar video. So that will be, that's different, right? So we want to make sure that the you get the live version that's current for this time. So that'll be where all those videos are. You can come back and listen to them at any time. For the next seminar coming up, please RSVP. Let us know that you're going to be coming. That'll be module 5, lifetime, or I'm sorry, let us know you're going to be coming. Let us know you're going to be joining, because our next seminar will be a virtual seminar. It's not going to be a live seminar. It'll be a virtual seminar. So but you can RSVP here and let us know that you're plugged in and ready to go. Now let's go back to the homepage here. These are the materials for today. So the first one we have is an outline of the whole module. So you can see all the weeks, all the materials, the videos, the documents, both of them are listed here. So that's all there for you. And the next one we have is the one I'm going to read to you, and that's the requirements for acceptance script. So this one, I do want to go through this with you and just point out some of the things that I alluded to a minute ago, and I'll just show you how this flow works. So this is the doctor or the CA, either one. And let's see. Okay, good. I got it. So the doctor says, will your condition stabilize if you don't follow the doctor's recommendations? Or it could be the CA. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Will your condition stabilize if you don't follow my recommendations? Or the CA would say the former. So I'll actually play this as the role of a CA. And for those of you CAs who do the reports of findings, I just want to compliment you and say, great job, fantastic work. We just had several reports of findings yesterday, and they all started care, and it was really great. So as a team, when we can serve more people in that capacity, it's just great for everybody all the way around. Okay, so my CA says, will your condition stabilize if you don't follow the doctor's recommendations? Patient says, no, the subluxations will get worse, and I could develop more degeneration. That's correct. And if the subluxations degenerate further, how will that affect you? Well, I'd have more headaches. I'd still be taking Tylenol and lose time from work. And there's a footnote, and this down here is important because we want to make sure that we wait for the patient to repeat their top primary concern and main effect. If they don't, prompt them with a reminder to repeat their primary concerns. Now, why is that important? The reason why that's important is because as I shared with you from this weekend, a very famous quote by Sigmund Freud says, people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. They'll do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So by pointing out just where this condition has taken them, and based on your expertise as an expert on the subject and your experience with other patients, where it could take them if they don't take care of it. So projecting to the future. By doing that, you're going to have a patient who's much more motivated to follow through and get the best care and the best results. So that's a question that we want to ask our patient. If you were to let this condition run its course without care, if you let it degenerate further, how is that going to affect you? And you wait. You wait because you want them to come to terms with what's been happening to them as a result of the condition not being cared for properly. So you wait and help them if they're not sure, if they're like, well, I don't know, it's just been all bad the whole time. Then you would prompt them with a question such as, well, do you remember what brought you into the office? The main thing that you were concerned about from our last appointment? Now, it could be that what brought them into the office is not the same thing as what they were most concerned about from the last appointment, right? You remember why that is? We talked about it in module 2. There's a point where the chief complaint might be different than the primary concern. So what brought them into the office may not ultimately be their biggest concern. But right now, we want, if they're not clear on answering that question, what would happen to you if you didn't do anything about this? If they're not clear on that, remind them with a question of what that primary concern was. Not so much the chief complaint, unless they're the same, the primary concern. So you remember how you shared with us the migraine headaches? Yes. Well, do you remember what you were doing about those? Like how they were affecting you? Remember that? Were you having to take medication for that? Oh yeah, I was taking Tylenol. That's right. And did you miss any time from work? Oh, that's right. I did. Yeah, I missed time from work and that's right. I wasn't sleeping. So you're reminding them with a question about what those primary concerns were and expressing empathy at the same time. So let's continue and go through this a little further. Isn't this cool? I mean, this really allows us to sort of endear our patients to really what's possible with chiropractic care. It's pretty incredible. I was adjusting yesterday all day and hearing about this. I had a couple patients that were just telling me how amazing their results were. I had one guy who had numbness, his hand, he was dropping things and he couldn't feel his fingers. And he was telling me yesterday, I can feel my fingers again. This is amazing. It's so incredible. I mean, just after a couple adjustments, those kinds of changes are happening. Okay, but we can't get there if they don't start care after the report of findings. We'll never get there if they don't actually get the care they need. Okay, so that's right. And if you don't follow through, you'll have wasted your time. Oh, I'm sorry, right here. So we did this part and we did footnote number 1. So the response to that is, that's right. If you don't follow through, you'll have wasted your time and your money while your condition worsened. Well, the doctor would rather not accept you as a patient than to have that happen. And I'm sure you probably wouldn't want to have that happen either. And then the patient says, that's absolutely, I want to get better and I can't afford to waste any more time or money. I agree. Can you commit to following the doctor's recommendations? Yes, I can. And then here's the $1 million question. What is your commitment level on a scale of 0 to 100%? I estimate that I'm at 80%. So that's the $1 million question. And that's the topic of today, the requirements for acceptance, right? Basically that's simply it, requirements for acceptance. Okay, so I estimate that I'm at 80%. May I ask why you chose 80%? I can't afford to pay. Well, cost is always an important factor, but putting that aside for a moment, is there any other reason why you chose 80%? And this is, again, let me just remind you, this is very typical of how this flow goes, right? The first thing in anyone's mind that's coming in and dealing with healthcare is, what is this going to cost? I've heard friends lose their houses over this stuff, right? So they're really going to be concerned about that. So anyways, no, aside from cost, I'm 100% committed. Now, footnote number 2 says, do not proceed to financial arrangements until the patient has given a clear 100 to follow the doctor's recommendations. Okay, so really important that that's followed completely. Then number 3, wait for the patient's answer before speaking, even if there's a delayed pause. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got to 3 yet. Let me keep reading. Sorry, I'm thinking ahead along the script. All right, so don't go into financial arrangements until the patient's given a clear 100. So aside from cost, I'm 100% committed. Great. The doctor can accept you as a patient if you agree to follow through. And if we can provide an affordable solution, and then this is also, you want to underline this or write this down or highlight it. When would you want to get started? Because that's another qualifying question about how committed the patient is to getting the care that they need, right? And that's why, and then I jumped to number 3, wait for the patient's answer before speaking, even if there is a delayed pause. So we want to make sure that our patient is really committed to, like, okay, I want to do this. I'll give you another example from a real life scenario, because I had a patient yesterday, one of the reports of findings that we had, who has Medi-Cal. And I shared some of the details at the seminar with you about Medi-Cal. So if that's something you're interested in, learning more about, or you're having some challenges there, just go back and listen to the seminar videos on that section. But when I did, because I did his report of findings, and when I got to this part, because keep in mind, his chiropractic care is being paid for by his insurance 100%, right? And not just for a little bit, like they're covering his care plan. And I had a sense that this was going to come up. So that's why I really kind of dug in a little more on this question. So if the doctor's if I'm going to accept you as a patient, and we're going to schedule all these appointments, and actually, I apologize, it wasn't 100%. There were some visits that were going to be deemed maintenance, and so those were going to be an out-of-pocket cost to him. He would have to pay for those because his Medi-Cal wasn't going to pay for those visits. So based on that, I said, this is what your care plan looks like, but I just want to emphasize some of these visits won't be covered by your insurance. Now, do you still need them? And I let him answer, yes, I do, clearly, because your subluxations are more advanced, even more advanced than I think what your insurance is aware of, because of the degenerative changes we're seeing as a result of long-standing subluxations. So yes, you need that care to keep your spine at this new threshold. Now, since your insurance isn't going to pay for all the care that is needed, I want to let you know there are some visits, that are going to be necessary for you to pay out of pocket. Now, if those visits were provided in a way that was affordable to you, and we can work with your budget, I just want to find out, based on that out-of-pocket part and all the appointments that you now know you need, when would you want to get started with your care? And he said, I want to get started today. And I said, okay, that's great. But that qualifier was really important. So now he knows there is some out-of-pocket cost. The insurance, fortunately, is going to cover the majority of the care. But based on those two parts of the equation, he's given me a clear 100. And now we can move into cost because there's no other concerns, right? And that was the example from yesterday. Okay, so let's jump back over. And if you have any questions on that, just raise your hand. I'll be happy to explain that for you. So, okay, so there's, let's see, there's the qualifying question, right? If we can provide an affordable solution, when would you want to get started? I want to get started today. Great, I'll show you our affordable payment options, and you can choose the one that best fits your budget. Okay, and then we dive right in, and that's the start that we want. So that basically wraps up this topic. I know we've spent a good half hour or more on this topic, and in the report of findings, it only takes a couple minutes, right? Unless there's a big concern, which we'll get into the care plan objections in a minute, but it literally just takes a couple minutes just to establish your requirements for acceptance. You want to establish that threshold. And to go back to the beginning, what does that ultimately do? It provides the scenario whereby your patients are going to get much better results. They're going to follow through. They're going to refer more friends and family, and you'll have a successful practice. So that's why this is such an important topic. And this kicks off our financial arrangements module. So with that, go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. I'll be happy to open up your line. I do want to say it is a beautiful, beautiful day out there, a summer day, and fruit is in the air. I just picked this peach. We have some fruit trees in our backyard. So for those of you who have fruit trees or have access to fresh fruit, it is a great time of year right now to enjoy all that fresh fruit. I don't see any hands up. So let me ask this then. Maybe there's someone that would like to share a success rate report. A success rate or a win in terms of success rates. Oh, now I see the hands going up. So I'll open up your line in a minute, but I do want to show you on the website the success rates page just real quickly. Let me share my screen again. And there we go. So in terms of establishing who's going to be doing what in your office, I'm reading a book right now, and it's a great book. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Kinich for this book, but it's a great book, and it's called How the Best Leaders Lead. Oh, I hope I'm saying that right. How the Best Leaders Lead. It's a great book. But the point of it being, they're talking in the book about how if you have not assigned accountability to each person in your team, there is no accountability. Now, that's a profound statement, right? If you have not assigned it, in other words, just like you're seeing on the screen, if we have not assigned the focuses to each person on our team, then they're not going to be responsible for producing a certain outcome, okay? Now, what it does when you do produce an outcome, or when you establish those accountability measures, everybody becomes laser focused on a clear objective. And it's really powerful what that does for your practice. It's pretty amazing. So here's our success rates for the year. I don't mind sharing these with you. Just know that I don't share any success rates with other doctors. So your stuff's all confidential, but I'll share mine with you just to let you know, because here's some of the challenges that we're having in my practice. I mean, we're clearly on track for our goals. New patient success rate's 100%. Report of findings is 86. The threshold is 80. So we're doing well there. I'll jump over to here. Care plan renewals, we're at 95% for the year. Threshold is 90%. But patient visits and revenue, those are at 92%. Still a strong A, but it's not 100%. So we have our quarterly meeting today. And that quarterly meeting is, where we all get together as a team and we really talk about where are we at? Where do we want to go? Are we on track? How do we hit our goal? And boy, we're going to have a great time in our meeting, because two topics in our meeting are going to be very important. And that is, how do we bring those two areas that are at 92%? How do we get those to 100%? And we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to pencil it all out, and we're going to come up with a strong game plan now that we're in this third quarter of the year. So I'm really excited about this meeting, and I'm excited about the input that my team will bring in terms of how to make those goals happen. But let's have a great week. I'll look forward to talking to you next week. Again, thank you so much for attending the seminar last weekend. Thanks for being part of DC Trainings, and let's keep charging ahead, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week. So thanks again.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.